Picard talking to an admiral. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and latest thing that I have read, and by the way, I hope you had a good Captain Picard Day. That was on the 16th of June, approximately the date when the Star Trek episode Pegasus aired. Picard talking to an admiral was a little bit embarrassed when the banner behind him had Captain Picard Day on it. He said, we do it for the children. They like to have a role model to look up to. And the article that I read had a lot to say about what kind of role model that Picard has been in the Star Trek universe. But that's not what we're here to talk about. The latest thing that we have heard is that an interesting idea in Star Trek Picard. Up to now, we have had the idea that the show would feature a 78-year-old Picard, now an ex-admiral of Starfleet. And in fact, it was brought up that Picard was, as a character, supposed to be 59 years old at the beginning of Star Trek The Next Generation. Patrick Stewart was 47 at the time. So, doing a little bit of math, it brings him 12 years older than his actual age, which means that when Star Trek Picard premieres, he will not be 78, but rather he will be 90. Now, if that is how they are going to do this upcoming series, it will have more to say about the character than we first thought of. And I think that adds some interest to this show if, in fact, they are holding to the age of the original character, or if they're going to go ahead and say that Picard is the same age as Patrick Stewart. We'll find out, I suppose. Anyway, what we know so far about the show, and we've talked about this before, was that it will be after the destruction of Romulus by the exploding star. And according to interviews that Kurtzman has done and some other sources that we've read about, what we've been able to put together is this, and it could be completely wrong. But what we've been able to put together is that we know from the preview that Picard led an armada, the greatest armada in history, and then the unthinkable happened. Now, we know that the star was exploding that was going to obliterate Romulus. We already know that from the beginning scene of the reboot Star Trek when Spock is attempting to engulf the exploding star in a black hole. Instead, the star explodes, destroys Romulus, and he himself and Nero and his ship are sucked into the black hole, and it creates an alternate timeline which becomes the Kelvin universe. Well, what has happened was that we believe that Picards Armada was to evacuate Romulus before the star exploded. And what we knew about it from the backstory on Star Trek was that they had anticipated the star not exploding as early as it did. That's why Spock was late. He wasn't just running late, but rather their calculations as to when the star would go nova accelerated beyond what they expected. So perhaps the unthinkable in Picard is that the star exploded before the Armada arrived to evacuate Romulus. That could be enough to say, I've had it with Starfleet. Now, that's one possibility. The second possibility, and there's also some support for this, is that Picard led an armada to try to evacuate what was left of the Romulan Empire and to some safe haven. And unlike what they did with the Klingons in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, where they actually found a new homeworld for the Klingons, is that it didn't work the same way. That perhaps there were some political leanings that kept them from doing just that, and that caused Picard to lose his faith in Starfleet and the Federation. And therefore, whatever he's going after in this series, he's doing as a private citizen rather than a member of Starfleet or a member of the Federation for that matter. So that's where this show looks like it's going to head, and I'd like to know what your ideas are on it, if you have heard anything differently, or if you think that what I have put before you is plausible, one of these two things, either that Picard did not make it there, or that Picard made it and was not greeted with the expected outcome of doing a noble thing. So let me know what you think about this, and go down in the comments and tell me about it. And ring the bell too. That'll notify you when the next video comes around. There's new rules on how that works. You click the bell and then it'll tell you whether you want to be notified all the time, or notified if it's important or something like that, but it shouldn't be too much to do. Oh, also, if you are watching on your phone, there may be a thing that you have to enable notifications in order for the bell notifications to work. So with all of that technobabble, don't go far.